This is day 5 of the February 93 7-day retreat at Springwater. Two questions that have come up in group meetings stick in the mind. So we'll look at those this morning. These are questions which were brought up by people. I'm not holding a lecture about the question, but going to enter into it. Can we do this together? Enter into a question somebody asks, which needs some openness, some interest. This was the question, approximately. When you, Toni, walked down the hill the other day, as you reported in a talk, the idea came up in the mind, this may be dangerously slippery. And with this idea arose the memory of having broken some bones on slippery roads, walking on slippery roads. And with that memory arose some fear, which is manifested in the body tensing. Some apprehension, we call it, which is not just mental, but also physical. With such an idea in the mind, one doesn't stride in a relaxed way. The muscles begin to tense. Maybe the heart begins to pound for fear that one may slip. But what I did was scrape the ground with a boot to test it out. Was it really slippery, or did it just look slippery? And upon finding ice right under a thin layer of snow, and further and further and further the same, turned around, didn't go down the hill completely, didn't continue in that way. So the person says, you had an idea aroused some fear, but it was tested out in reality. What was the reality? Did the idea really represent reality? It was put to a test, and the test said, yes, it's slippery. And not wanting the consequences of that, I turned around. Now the person continues asking, do we have the interest and energy, attention, to look at other ideas that come up in the mind, to find out whether they represent something real? Or are we just afraid of ideas without testing them out? Is this real? This is how I understood the question. Because what was discussed at times in the group was no, this is how it was put. Do we see the danger? Do we see the danger of ideas that are not tested? Do we perceive the danger just as with ice, of ideas that come up in the mind, like self-image, remembrances about someone else, a situation. And we go by the remembrance. We take it for true, for real. We don't test it out. Why not? And why don't we see the danger of not testing it out, but going with the ideas? And living in fear of our ideas. We sort of came to it. Why don't we see the danger of acting on remembered or indoctrinated ideas and experiences which do not fit the reality of the situation? What is lacking that we don't see the danger of our ideas and their misfit? And yet, living in these ideas, the ideas preoccupy and occupy the mind in such a consuming way that the direct contact with reality is barred. And of course, the images of each other is the easiest to talk about, to look at. Examples that were brought up as if you hurt me, you criticize me or insult me, will I carry this image around of you, the insulter, you, the dangerous person, to avoid or to hit back? Or will I test out what was said? Maybe it wasn't an insult. Maybe it wasn't an unfair criticism. Maybe there's something to look at in what someone says to me. But can I even hear it? When I already have an image of this person, he did this before, or he's known for this, or I'm so afraid of being told about myself, because I don't like myself, but I don't want somebody else to see me that way, to tell me about it. So the resistance to hearing something, or in that resistance, what's the word? Distortion of what is heard. It doesn't come in the way it's said. It's heard differently. And therefore our relationship is marred. And if both of us keep up imagery about each other and don't reality test it by meeting directly, freshly, do we see the danger of that? Two people can't relate with each other that way. It's impossible. It all takes place in an idea world. And the ideas can elicit just as much fear and anger as a present moment of somebody insulting me, remembering it, imaging it, fantasizing about it. Keeps this body going. And I can't hear what you say tomorrow. The perception is distorted because of the image I already have of you and trying to protect my own image. Why don't we test this out? This is the question. Why don't we see the danger of living in ideas? Seeing their usefulness. The idea of slippery ground is a useful idea to be tested out. to go home and not have a walk through a beautiful snowy forest when everything is fine, no slipperiness at all, but you're convinced it is, you don't test it out. It's too bad living just in an untested assumption. And what was also brought out is that sometimes the energy is there to look what is wrong, what's going on with something. One may have an idea. The example was mentioned of a misfunctioning, clogged up stovepipe, clogged with ice and snow and then dripping, causing a flood. And the interest aroused and the energy there to see what's wrong with this stovepipe. Not just the idea or image, I don't know how to do those things. It'd be a very easy image for me to live up to. I'm not technical minded. But if curiosity is there, what's wrong? What's happening? And not just fantasizing or speculating about the stovepipe, but getting up there on the ladder and looking and maybe surprised at one's enterprise. Before one was tired. I think a person reported, I was very tired. I wanted to go to sleep. And all of a sudden, there's energy to look, to find out, and to rectify. And then again the question, why doesn't this happen with all the ideas we carry around and don't investigate? Don't see the danger of not investigating them. The ideas I have about the person I live with, my husband, my wife, my children. Not just one image, but accumulated images. And responding to those rather than to the person there. We talk about it a lot. But it's so true, and we don't look at it. Or do we? Do we come upon it and wonder about why we don't test it out? Look at the person freshly. The image may be there. It comes up. That's what the brain does, automatically. It's its function, to function in symbols and remembrances, to prevent danger. But it can't, the brain can't discern between real danger and remembered danger. It's incapable of doing that. Something else has to be there, which we call attention or direct looking, direct examination. We talked about it with fear at length in group meetings and also in a talk or two. To enter into fear and let the idea about it go. Because it's seen how dangerous it is to go by the idea. Leads to escape and no direct finding out of this age-old thing that has been bugging me, making me ill. Fear. What is it? This person, who is he? And we have to invite each other to look at each other again. Even though the images come up. But if we're really there this moment, maybe the other person isn't really there. Maybe I'm not really there. But if there is really there-ness, one place or another, the image is not all-powerful. There's a flesh and blood human being there, listening afresh, looking anew. And one finds to one's surprise that the images fade in such a moment. They're not important. They're not needed. Because we can talk directly. Can we? Can we clarify what was bugging us about the insult? Can we talk to each other? Or will the defenses go up immediately again, afraid to be told something or to hear something? For protection of my image? Do we see that this is what we're protecting? Some idea of myself that we hold on to? Why? We do, but is it okay to ask why? And not give explanation 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. But let the why help in looking, in observing this phenomenon, which keeps human beings divided and at loggerheads and at each other's throats, all over the world, for a long, long time. This is what war is based upon image making. I'm not saying they're not economical and other factors, but anybody who has lived through a war knows the images are beginning to circulate by the media about the enemy. Distortions of Jews or Asiatics or Middle Easterners or blacks or whites. Because it's known to us what power images hold to arouse hatred or suspicion, the energy to fight and kill. Maybe in a talk like this and looking directly for ourselves in our small scale relationships, which are only a reflection of the large scale relationships all over the world. Maybe right now we see the danger, the dead-endedness of it. But the next time we meet somebody who has hurt us in the past, or we think has hurt us in the past, remember he has hurt us, or she. Will we see the image and not be totally blinded by it? Sort of take another look. This in itself may have a danger of its own. A person once reported after retreat, feeling so open and easygoing, and I know I'd taken somebody to the bus station. I don't remember the exact circumstances. And someone on the side of the street asked for a ride, and just let him into the car. Again, don't remember the circumstances, but it was a dangerous rider. The person wanted money and the car. Don't remember what all. So, more recently, the person said, I'm going to be careful when I take a rider. Certain areas, certain times of the day, at night. There may be a time when one can't test out. One goes by one's experience, which may mean some innocent person may be left by the side of the road, or a dangerous person may not have been invited and caused the theft of the car or my own life. talked a little bit about that too, sort of being streetwise and walking in a big city. Maybe there can be a fine line of being alert, looking and taking the necessary action, walking where lights are, or going with somebody, and being paranoid, everybody being a potential assailant, rapist, or whatever. But there are many, many circumstances in our life where it is not like that, where there is really potential danger, but where we live in memories and take them to be real, which excludes the possibility that somebody changes, and we do change. A person who may have said the insulting words may have really felt sorry about it, or didn't mean to insult, wanted to convey something, which then turned out to be an insult, but it wasn't meant to be one. So how do we listen to each other? Can we listen without distorting what someone says? That takes real openness and vulnerability. To, if it hurts, then to take it from there. If it hurts, I'll deal with it then, but right now I'll listen. And one can feel at such a moment the body sometimes vacillating, wanting to close up and then opening and then wanting to close up again. It's not quite sure, because the ideas go back and forth. And the habit, of course, is to protect. It has a tremendous momentum. But if there is this energy of wakefulness, of curiosity, what is it going to be like when this person talks? Maybe nothing of what one expected happens at all. But if I was closed, I may even hear something insulting and something that wasn't meant to be of that kind at all. It wasn't meant to be critical at all. So with our attachment and stickiness to stories, we may continue that in the mind instead of being open to a change. That's dangerous. Do we see that? Dangerous of our precious relationships, which are possible for human beings. To really be there for another. Maybe just in listening, maybe in talking, in working together. Freshly, newly, leaving behind what happened, even though it's there. Memory is never anesthetized out of or cut out of existence. But it can be viewed intelligently when it comes up. Is it something to pay attention to? Is it something habitual? Something to be tested out? That's possible when there is interest and awareness. Because the question came up, how does this awareness arise? $60,000 question. Today, probably with inflation, probably $60 million. If I'm interested in looking, what's the weather out today? The shades are down. I want to know. How does it look outside? I pull up the shades and I look. And wonder of wonders, what a world this morning. I want to look some more, and the energy is there to look. Because that's a beautiful thing. But what happens in the human organism has also its own beauty. how the brain manufactures imagery, projects it, to watch that, to become really interested in it, and see what it does, and see how it affects me in my happiness with other people, how it prevents good cheer from arising. Or how good cheer arises when there's attention to see that imagery is not the real thing, is not the real person. The real person is, hello, how are you this morning? Isn't it a beautiful sight? The snow on the railings and on the trees, blowing in clouds, and the birds lifting up and down. Get some food from the feeder. We can watch that together, and there'll be a lot of joy. I don't have to remember what you said 2 years ago or yesterday. There's a new day for both of us, for all of us. The other question which has come up several times was about helping each other. In one earlier group meeting, we talked about that and then brought up the question, well, what is my motive for helping someone? And most of us agreed that most of the time it's selfish motive. Very rarely is there not some motive to feel better about ourselves as helpers, feel gratification of having done good for someone, being meaningfully engaged, the energy that comes from that, which also entails often a good image about oneself, maybe replacing a bad one of being unworthy, and now I'm doing something for people and I feel worthy, and that image gives satisfaction. And the question came up, can one really be of help when there's a selfish motive? Implied in the question is, do I have to wait till I rid myself of selfishness before I can be of help to someone else? Because that's already an impossible question. Who can rid themselves of selfishness? That's again another selfish motive, to be the selfless one. The one who has conquered, and is there imagery in that, and satisfaction. On Saturday morning, a person who had really longed to come to retreat for a long time had an accident. It was very slippery, as we all know. She was sliding around in the street and almost hit a person who was shoveling snow. In order to avoid that person, slammed into a concrete wall, totaled the car, and broke both left arm and leg. Particularly the arm, the wrist, in a very painful, complicated way. She told me that she was lucid enough to remember that 5 minutes away from the accident, 2 people were house-sitting, 2 people that she knows very well, good friends. They were going to house-sit for her during retreat. They were 5 minutes away from this accident. So she had the policeman or whoever call there. The woman came, or both of them came right away, and the woman rode in the ambulance with her. Quite a distance to the hospital. And then stayed with her for 12 hours. She was in the emergency room. And they're staying with her now. She's going to have surgery on Friday. She can't do anything by herself. And other people came and visited, and organize some things for her, hospital bed, wheelchair maybe. So all kinds of help arrived. And when you have a broken arm and leg, you don't care about the motive of someone helping. It's a beautiful, tear-arousing thing that people come and take care of you, take you to the hospital, feed you. They brought food into the emergency room. She said people were so nice in the emergency room. They let her friends bring the food and feed her and do this and that for her. We help each other all the time, don't we? In these talks where we try to look at our barriers and difficulties and pains and sorrows, we usually look at what divides us. And it's important to look at if we're interested. But there's this other part of us in which we're helpful to each other. Whether we want it or not, we're all cooperating in an incredible way. Or whatever we're all doing turns out to be very cooperative and helpful. To think of people flying into Sarajevo, driving trucks through that precarious landscape to bring food to people there. Some of them have been killed in their trucks. Bring food to Somalia. Whatever the motive may have been, people were getting food. People have stores, supermarkets. We go and buy the food. The mailman brings the mail. I couldn't begin to list it. We're all, we help each other to be able to exist in this complicated day and age. Here in Springwater, at this center, there are people, whatever their motives are, make it possible for other people to come to retreat and have this incredible week of silence, quietness, openness, and closedness, and watching, maybe becoming aware of the closedness. And in that awareness, a little opening. One person told me, I hear all kinds of criticisms about staff here, things going on, trying to do this or that change, but she says they always spring off an incredible retreat, no matter what else happens. That's helpful. One may not be motivated or may have other motives in this, to get some quiet oneself, or not live as one has lived before in the city, and under the pressure of a job. Although there's a lot of work here too, people may not realize this. Sometimes people say, why are people here? What are they doing here? Well, you'd have to be here for a year to find out. So it's quite unfathomable in what ways we help each other. With and without motive. This without motive is the thing when something happens and you, well, in this case, telephone comes, Betsy is hurt, and out there and quickly enough to climb into the ambulance. It's not a matter of motive, it's doing because something is needed. And human beings function that way in emergencies the world over. The stories abound about this instantaneous action when action is needed. the energy arising out of the demand of the situation itself. One doesn't know where it came from, where the clarity, how it arose, but it was there to do what was needed to be done. So what about motives to help others? Maybe one feels one is too selfish, one should do some selfless work, doing hospice work or on an aid station or with children, starving, street people, retarded, whatever. The opportunities abound for helping. One can look, it's possible to discern motives. But discerning a motive doesn't need to keep one home. Discerning an image that gives a quick boost, because an image just needs to arise, I'm good, and the boost is already there with the arising of the image. But that can be seen. And if it's seen, it doesn't have to keep milking this image. I'm helping, I'm good. It becomes boring if one sees it. So we always have to know what we are, and we always want to be something or become somebody. Not to let that become a depressing thing, but to see this as how it operates with the human mind. And it can be seen, and the seeing is the diffusing of it. Then it doesn't become the most important thing to feel good about oneself, but to do whatever is needed at the hospice or the hospital or wherever one is, or at work with people. In the family. Of course, the other side of the image of being a good helper, a selfish motive, is feeling inferior, having a negative image of myself. I'm no good. It gives the opposite of positive energies. It drains, makes depressive. I'm no good for anything. Everybody else is good for something. I'm not. Can one watch that? How that idea has an inevitable effect on our body and on our relationship with each other. I'm not saying get rid of the negative image, replace it with a positive one. There are such situations, therapeutic situations, where this is aimed at and maybe sometimes succeeded in, replacing negative imagery with positive. I find that the most important thing is to see it, to have some awareness there, without judging, without action to get rid of or to acquire. Just to see this causes that and learn about it. And this affects relationship, not to blame the relationship or to blame the other person, but to see how negative self-image affects our relationships with each other. It's a fact. It's nothing to be blamed for. Who knows how it arose? We may have been told how worthless we are, compared with other siblings who were so much better at this or that. We've all gone through this in some way or another. And here it is. But again, we see the danger of clinging to this imagery. And the beauty of just seeing it as imagery, which connects within the body to all of our functions and in our relationship. Just to see it and let the seeing take care of it. It does in an unfathomable way, because it brings a new in-touchness with what's real. An image is real, not what it represents, but an image having an effect on the body, depressing it, is a real process. What is not real is that I'm this unworthy person. That's an idea. But thinking I'm unworthy makes me very depressed and not very energetic. So living up to imagery is some sort of self-fulfilling process, which does not have to continue if it is lit up by waking up to it, seeing it, wondering about it, being curious about it, learning about it. And in learning about it in oneself, one learns about it in other people, because the same processes hold for all of us, positive or negative, and they shift. Once today positive, tomorrow negative, the imagery. So we're never completely stuck. Things change. And we can notice it and learn from it. By learning, I don't mean to build up any imagery about ourselves, but to find out as we go how we function. And in the process, lightening up, less baggage. We will end here for today.